Okay, so I took pictures of the first step where I started down here, sewed all the way up the length, right, then I flipped it. I took a picture of putting the elastic in. So right now my elastic is in. I put it underneath the top 2 layers. I close it down. Then I stitch over the very end of elastic, and I leave a 1/2 inch, I guess, ish. I don't really ever measure anything. Alright, then I stitch over it twice, and I stop my needle on the outside of my line, because I draw a line around the entire side where I'm going to serge. All of my diapers I have a line, that way they always look the same. Now I stop my needle after that line because the wider the opening is when you're putting the elastic inside on the next step, the easier it is to do. So it's tacked down on one end, and you have the inner part of the casing done. And those are the only 2 stitches that we've done so far. So I'm going to flip it, and now this is when I tack the elastic down. I have the elastic coming out because it's tacked down up there, and so I go and I open it up and I feed it in, and I just feel it and make sure that it's nice and close to this seam that we sewed. And I can feel on the inside where the elastic is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch all the way down on the outside of the serge line so that this elastic is held in place, but without being serged. Now I stop, especially when I'm doing the legs, I stop and make sure that it's still lined up. The waist is a straight line, so I pretty much just go in one line for the waist. I have my elastic marking right here, so I stop when I get to that elastic marking, and I flip it back. Now I'm looking at the diaper. Both wings are right here. The elastic casing is in. The elastic just has to be stretched. Now I don't measure my elastic. All I do is I feel what it feels like, and I'm probably going to knock the iPad off, but I just make sure that it stretches as much as the elastic allows it to stretch, and that it completely stretches out in the fabric too. I kind of have markings on my sewing machine with permanent marker of where the elastic should end. And then I make sure I hold the elastic in my right hand, and I hold it down so that it stays right up against that bottom seam. You want it as far away from where you're going to serge as you can possibly make it, while not having a gap between the serging and where the elastic is going to sit, because if you have gaps you can have folding in the elastic. It really is a tight balance in getting the right seam for serge, because about when I first started I probably serged the elastic into the outside edge more times than I didn't. I've gotten much better, but it still does happen from time to time, so just keep that in mind when you are serging. You got to make sure you hold the fabric kind of away from the elastic, otherwise you're going to catch it and you'll have to rip out the serging, and that's never fun. Alright, so with that I'm done with the waist elastic. So what I do is I just trim the threads on that side. One thing I do hate is going back and trimming threads. Then I trim the elastic off, because the elastic is still inside there. And I trim about, I leave about that much left-ish. And you pull it, and it's done. So then you can just stretch it out when you're serging. And the whole diaper will look like this one that is currently ready to be serged.